The first long electric tram service and the first operated by hydropower was at the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, opening in 1883. The system had a dark red and cream colour called blood and custard. The first generation electric trams were very much the same as the later horse trams, but with an extended platform to carry the controller. For reasons of comfort, the platform was later enclosed to form a vestibule, and later part of the upper deck was also enclosed, leaving the ends open. These were called balcony cars. Later, these exposed ends were covered, forming an all-enclosed car of standard design. Finally, a completely new concept of timber frame and metal cladding was introduced in the 1930s, called luxury cars or streamliners. For some years, the early cars carried symbols to define routes, as many people could not read. The horse tramway system operated by the DUTC commenced electrification in 1896, and the last Dublin horse tram ceased service in 1901 and completed the transformation in 5 years. The new company, led by William Martin Murphy, continued his policy of upgrading the horse tram network, expanding and forming valuable interconnections to improve the system. I have now given you a brief account of the formation of the Dublin horse tram system, its gradual growth and absorption, and its conversion to electric traction. You saw the evolution from the pioneering design of the Giant's Causeway, the transition from a horse tram to an electric car, the introduction of a windscreen to create the open toppers, partial enclosure of the upper deck to create the balcony trams, and finally the 5th generation of tram design, the luxury cars. Now let us sit back and enjoy watching these various trams in action, serving our city and providing a service of great excellence and advancement. At one time, the Dublin City Tram operation and fleet was the pride of Europe, with many innovations such as directional points change by the use of the controller and not by a points boy changing a lever. There was also a danger of worn overhead cable, usually at tram pole connections, shearing and falling to the ground with the risk of electrocution. The DUTC devised the Quaney principle, which is now used wherever there is overhead power supply. The joining power cables were connected separately by a cable over the tram pole outreach to prevent the fall, so simple yet devised by a Dubliner. The Dublin tram was wider by 7 inches or 175 millimetres than their European counterparts, on account of the railway gauge used, leading to a steadier and more comfortable ride. The metal-clad luxury tram built at Spa Road in the 30s were lighter, more comfortable, safer and more rapid than any in Europe at the time. The extra internal width was also a great benefit where passenger movement was concerned. The Amsterdam tramway and other countries adopted the Dublin model as it was seen to be more progressive, The decision by Reynolds, the director, a known bus enthusiast, to close the tramways and adopt the alternative of bus operation was ill-considered. He simply and blindly followed the British policy of tram closures, but executed it heartlessly and in greater haste. From having one of the best transport services in the world, Dublin was plunged into one of the worst. We are still trying to catch up. It was all a mistake. In spite of the rising on Easter Monday 1916 and the terrible disruption caused by the shelling of HMS Helga, the trams kept running. Night crews worked tirelessly to clear the tracks for a continued service. At least 2 trams were destroyed. One, number 108 from the City to Hope fleet, took a direct hit and was used as a barricade by the insurgents. There were instances where rebels boarding a tram with the conductor taking the weapon and hiding it in the destination box. The trams were part of the scenario. Trams, unlike their bus counterparts, were decorated and adorned for special occasions and festivals. Whether calling young men to arms for the First World War, official openings, the Eucharistic Congress, visits from monarchs, or simply to welcome Gene Autry, the cowboy singer of the 40s, trams played their civic role. No tram system could operate without its secret force, the works car. They usually appear only at night time to relay a section of track, repair cobbles, or attend to overhead wires. Many were adapted from earlier tram designs that had served as passenger cars and now continue in a new role. It is often these survivors that keep an abandoned design long enough to reach preservation. This motley army can range from water tanks to cool track in hot spells, grinders to level worn track, sweepers to clear the grooves, and ploughs to shift snow. All diverse designs, but all part of a tram fleet. As with all large enterprises, the odd tragedy or accident was inevitable. Yet in spite of this, the Dublin United Tramways had an excellent record of safety. On the last day of horse traction, a passenger was badly injured, but the tram staff were exonerated. There was the occasional collision, usually the tram coming off the better. All trams carried a safety mechanism to scoop up fallen passengers, affectionately called cowcatchers. The loud gong was an invaluable warning of the tram's presence. Fallen trees, a collapsed horse, a mishap between other road users, all affected the movements of the tram. No tram system, or indeed any public transport enterprise, could operate without a base or home. For each section or part of a section must have its depot. They were located sometimes in the city environs or sometimes at the terminus. It was a refuge for both the staff and the trams after a long day's work, where they were cleaned, the brasses polished, minor repairs carried out. After a period of time, or in the event of an accident or failure of some component, the tram was taken out of service for a more serious overhaul. Every 7 years or so, often very much longer, the tram was stripped of its skin or panels, the tie bars restrained, the seating replaced, or the tram given a new roof. Sometimes the trams were raised on jacks, the trucks or bogies replaced with either refurbished stock or new acquisitions. Some of the horse trams were converted to electric traction by extending the platform. Later, they had windscreens added to create a vestibule car or open topper, and some became balcony cars, a continual metamorphosis over many years. The trams were timber-bodied, and decayed components could be replaced, giving the tram car great longevity, unlike the motorbus. The Hill of Holt cars survived for almost 60 years. Some trams in the Isle of Man are over 100 years old. The metal-clad luxury cars were withdrawn from service before they reached their potential. Without the depots, the system could not have survived. Many of them continue now as bus depots or other use. Many have been replaced. Unlike the bus, the tram was confined to a set route, four-wheelers for the shorter journeys and eight-wheelers or bogie cars for the distant runs. Buses, which are not confined to rails, can interchange easily and can move about more freely. That is their advantage. They are not confined to tracks, which have their limitations, but it is also the great advantage of the tram. Tram crews, going back to the horse traction days, developed a fondness and bond with their equine workmates, and the same crew had the same horses for many years, working with the same trams. It may seem strange in this day and age, but crews also bonded with their tram car. They were aware of their idiosyncrasies and individual traits. They bonded with the trams in their care. They were proud to be photographed with them and on them. They had a personal identity with them. The depots were part of an extended family where a strong camaraderie existed. Crews also knew their set passengers, meeting them at the same time, day after day, year after year, and a friendship grew between them. There was great sadness when the closures began. Crowds gathered to see them off. Many sought souvenirs as keepsakes. The staff were proud of their association with the tram and keenly felt their passing. This section of film was extracted from a travel documentary called Glimpses of Erin, produced in 1934 by a James Fitzpatrick. The original livery or colour scheme of the Dublin Trams, operated by the DUTC, was dark blue waist panels and white. At the time of introducing the luxury trams in 1933, the company had introduced a new livery called French Grey, which gave great results for photographs, but was dismal in service, and fortunately was short-lived. The first green and white tram was number 300 luxury car from the Hoth fleet. These shots were taken from the top of Nelson's Pillar, with crowds of Dubliners looking ant-like in the strong sunlight beneath. This film was made towards the closure of the line and was presented to the Society by Leo Sheeran of Power Video Productions. How handsome the luxury cars look as they glide effortlessly along. This rare footage of a luxury tram in colour was part of a film made in the 1940s about the linen industry in Northern Ireland. Towards the closure, the appearance of the bus grew ever more apparent as it was phased in, and gradually the trams were phased out. It was their death knell. Tramcar number 224 was used in a sequence of the series Penny Dreadful. Here she is being taken from the set, hauled through the arch of Dublin Castle ignominiously by a four-wheel drive. Although available for some time to professionals, colour photography really only made its appearance to the ordinary person in the mid-50s. Photographs of trams in colour are quite rare and often of poor quality. Touching up black and white photographs in colour was quite common. When the tram system began closing down, there was great public interest and indeed sadness, and often it made headlines next day in the newspapers. Tearing up the cobblestones to grub up the tracks meant no going back. The end had come at last. There was an attempt to preserve complete tramcars by the forerunners of the National Transport Museum Society, but without help. Their early efforts came to nothing. Tram bodies were eagerly sought and were sold off for about £30 to be set up as out offices, sheds and beachside family summer homes, some surviving until quite recently. It was sad to see many of these fine relics crumble away without money to save them or a place to put them. The Society does not yet have a luxury car in the fleet, but there is still a chance of saving one. One such car which was offered to the Society. It may seem unforgivable, but we had no place to put it under cover, nor the capital to construct a shelter. It survived until 2012. Again, the Society was offered this bogie luxury car in 2013, found in Black Rock and well capable of being restored. Approaches were made to find a shelter, but without success. The owner of this tram, number 108, wept to see it burn. It broke my heart. There was nothing I could do.